Jake Morrison walked through the massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber. The ceiling stretched so high above him that he could barely see the top. 12 different alien species sat in their seats, looking down at the single human standing. On the floor below them, the Zephyrian Chancellor spoke first. His voice came out like wind through metal pipes. "Human Ambassador Morrison, you stand before the Galactic Council to hear our final decision about your species." Jake looked up at the alien without moving his face. He had been waiting for this moment for 3 months. Every day he had watched these creatures talk about humans like they were pets that had gotten too big for their cage. "The Council has decided," the Chancellor continued. "Your species has grown beyond acceptable limits. Your colonies spread too far. Your ships travel too fast. Your people ask too many questions." The Rex Queen clicked her sharp mouth parts. "Together." She looked like a giant bug with arms that could tear a man in half. "Humans disturb the natural order. You do not know your place." Jake still did not move. He kept his hands at his sides and his face blank. Behind him, Lieutenant Emma Brooke stood just as still. She was the only other human in the room full of aliens who wanted to see humanity crushed. The crystalline ethereal delegate glowed brighter. When it spoke, the words came out like music made of ice. "Your species shows signs of dangerous growth. History teaches us what happens when aggressive species are left unchecked." More voices joined in. The massive Chronari delegates pounded their war hammers on the floor. The sound echoed through the chamber like thunder. Their leader stood up, all 9 feet of him covered in thick armor. "Humans fight too much," the Chronari general said. "Your history is nothing but war after war. You cannot be trusted with advanced technology." Jake finally spoke. His voice was calm and clear. "What exactly are you demanding?" The Zephyrian Chancellor spread his wings wide. "Complete surrender of all human colonies beyond your home system. All human military vessels to be destroyed or turned over to Council forces. All human research into advanced weapons to stop immediately." "And if we refuse?" Jake asked. The chamber fell silent. Every alien delegate stared down at the human ambassador. Some looked excited. Others looked hungry. A few looked afraid, though they tried to hide it. The Chancellor's voice grew louder. "Then the Council will remove the human threat by force. Your species will be reduced to a single world population under Council supervision. Your technology will be taken away. Your people will learn to serve their betters." Jake nodded slowly. "I see. And how long do I have to give you our answer?" 48 hours, the Rex Queen said. Her mandibles clicked faster now. "More than generous for such a simple choice." The ethereal delegate pulsed with cold light. "Logic demands you accept. You cannot fight 12 species at once. Your people number only 20 billion across 30 worlds. The Council commands over 500 billion beings across 2,000 systems." Jake looked around the chamber. He studied each alien face. The reptilian saurians sat perfectly still, their eyes never blinking. The floating Nabari drifted in their environmental suits, whispering to each other in their gas language. The robotic mechanoids calculated probabilities with their glowing processors. 48 hours, Jake repeated. "Very well, I will return with humanity's answer." He turned to leave, but the Chronari general called out, "Human! You do not seem worried. Do you not understand what we are offering you?" Jake stopped walking. He turned his head slightly, just enough to look back at the general. "I understand perfectly. You are offering us slavery or death. You think those are the only 2 choices we have." "They are," the Chancellor said. "Your species is young and weak. You have been lucky so far, but luck runs out." Jake smiled for Boss. The first time since entering the chamber. It was not a happy smile. "We will see about that." He walked out of the chamber with Emma following close behind. The massive doors closed behind them with a sound like a mountain falling. Emma waited until they were alone in the corridor before speaking. Sir, they really mean it this time. Our intelligence shows Council fleets moving toward the border systems. Jake nodded. I know. How are our preparations coming along? Captain Carter reports the Endeavor is ready for immediate departure. Our communication network is in place across all human systems. The defense fleets are on high alert. They walked toward the docking bay where their ship waited. Other aliens in the corridor moved out of their way. Most looked at the humans with curiosity. A few looked at them with pity. What about our other preparations? Jake asked quietly. Emma looked around to make sure no one was listening. Danny Rodriguez confirms all surveillance equipment is in place and functioning. We have been recording Council communications for 8 months now. Steve, Walsh has the special operations teams ready to move on your command. Jake stopped walking. He turned to face a large window that looked out into space. Hundreds of ships from different species flew past the space station. Trade vessels, passenger ships, military patrols. The normal business of galactic civilization. They think this will be easy, Jake said. They think humans are just another primitive species that got too big for their cage. Aren't we? Emma asked. I mean, compared to them, we are new to space. Our technology is centuries behind theirs. Our numbers are tiny. Jake continued looking out the window. Emma, what do you know about Earth history? The basics, sir. The usual school lessons. Did they teach you about the Spartans at Thermopylae? Emma frowned. 300 soldiers holding off an army of thousands? I remember something like that. The Persians had over 100,000 soldiers. They had the best weapons, the most experience, the largest empire in the world. They offered the Spartans a choice, surrender and live as slaves or fight and die. What did the Spartans choose? Jake turned away from the window. They chose to make the Persians pay such a terrible price for victory that the entire world learned what it meant to fight Greeks. They started walking again. Emma thought about this as they made their way through the station corridors. Sir, are you saying we should fight them? I am saying the Council has made the same mistake that empires have been making for thousands of years. They think that being bigger and older and stronger means they understand their enemy. They reached the docking bay. The human ship Endeavor waited for them, looking small and simple compared to the alien vessels around it. But Jake knew what human ships could really do when they needed to. The Council demanded war, Jake said as they boarded their ship. They think they know what war with humans will look like. They think it will be quick and clean and easy. Emma sealed the airlock behind them. And what will it really look like? Jake sat down in his command chair. They are about to learn that humans have been perfecting the art of war for 10,000 years. We have fought each other in every possible way, on every type of ground, with every weapon we could imagine. The ship pulled away from the station. Through the viewports, Jake could see the Council chamber, where 12 alien species sat making plans for humanity's future. In 48 hours, I am going to walk back into that chamber, Jake said, and I am going to give them hell. Jake Morrison walked back into the Galactic Council chamber exactly 48 hours after he had left. Emma Brooks followed behind him, carrying a small data pad. The alien delegates sat in their same seats, looking down at the two humans with expressions that ranged from bored to hungry. The Zephyrian Chancellor spoke first. Ambassador Morrison, you return as promised. Have you brought your species surrender? Jake stopped in the center of the chamber. He looked up at the 12 different alien species and smiled the same cold smile he had worn when leaving. I have brought humanity's answer to your demands. The Rex Queen leaned forward in her seat. Her mandibles clicked with excitement. Excellent! The sooner your people accept their new position, the easier this will be for everyone. I am afraid there has been a misunderstanding, Jake said. His voice carried clearly through the massive chamber. You seem to think you offered us a choice between surrender and war. But those were not the only options. The crystalline ethereal. Delegate pulsed brighter. Explain your meaning, human. Jake reached into his jacket and pulled out a data pad of his own. Let me share some information with the Council. Information that I think you will find very interesting. He touched the pad, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. The aliens leaned forward to see what the human was, showing them. This is the private communication log between Chancellor Zephyr and Queen Vrex, recorded 6 days ago, Jake said. The hologram showed the two aliens talking in what they thought was a secure channel. In the recording, the Chancellor was speaking. The human colonies control the richest mining systems in the Outer Rim. Once we remove them, we can divide those resources between our species, the Queen's voice replied. And what of the other council members? They will expect their share. Let them expect, the Chancellor said in the recording. The Ethereals care only for their crystal formations. The Chronari want only battle glory. We can give them meaningless victories while we take the real prizes. The chamber fell silent. Every alien delegate stared at the Chancellor and the Queen. The other species looked angry and surprised. Jake touched his pad again. Another recording, played. This time it showed the Ethereal High Command discussing human technology. Their quantum computers exceed our own capabilities by 30%, the Ethereal leader was saying. If we can capture their research stations intact, we will gain a significant advantage over the other species. A second ethereal voice added, The Council believes we support this war for philosophical reasons. They do not know we simply want their technology for ourselves. More recordings played. The Chronari generals planning to keep human prisoners as gladiators for their entertainment. The Saurian leadership discussing how to use human colonies as breeding farms for their food animals. The mechanoids calculating how many human brains they could harvest for their processing networks. Each recording showed the same pattern. Every species on the Council had secret plans for humanity that they had not shared with their allies. Every species planned to betray the others once the humans were defeated. The Nabari delegate's voice came out as a hiss from its environmental suit. How did you obtain these recordings? Our communications are encrypted with quantum barriers. Jake looked directly at the floating alien. The same way we obtained the complete tactical plans for your combined fleets. The same way we learned about your weapons capabilities, your supply lines, and your political weaknesses. He touched his pad again. New information appeared in the hologram. Complete star charts showing the positions of every Council military vessel. Detailed analyses of their weapons and defenses. Economic reports showing which species depended on trade routes that passed through human space. You see, Jake continued, while you were busy planning how to divide up humanity's remains, we were studying you, all of you. For the past 18 months, we have been listening to your private communications, tracking your ship movements, and analyzing your economic data. The Chronari general stood up, his armor clanking loudly. This is impossible. Our security systems are the best in the galaxy. Jake turned to face the massive alien warrior. Your security systems were designed to keep other Council species from spying on you. They were not designed to stop humans. Emma stepped forward and activated her own datapad. New displays appeared around the chamber, surrounding the alien delegates with information they had never seen before. This is the complete psychological profile of every Council leader, she said, including their personal fears, their political weaknesses, and their species' historical trauma responses. The displays showed detailed information about each alien race. The Zephyrians' deep fear of being grounded, rooted in their evolution from flying creatures. The Vrex obsession with social hierarchy that made them vulnerable to challenges to their authority. The Ethereals' inability to understand emotional responses, which made them easy to manipulate through fear. You think you know humans, because you have studied our public history, Jake said, but you missed the most important lesson. Humans are very good at learning about their enemies. We have been doing it for thousands of years. The Chancellor's wings fluttered nervously. What do you want, human? What I want, Jake said, is for you to understand that your choice was never between an easy victory and a difficult one. Your choice is between peace with humanity as equals or a war that will destroy everything you have built. The Vrex Queen's mandibles snapped shut. You threaten us? Your 20 billion against our 500 billion? Jake smiled again. I'm not threatening you. I am educating you. Let me tell you about a place called Vietnam. The hologram changed to show images from Earth's history. Jungle warfare, guerrilla tactics, a small nation fighting against the most powerful military in human history. A tiny country fought against a superpower that had overwhelming advantages in numbers, technology, and resources. The superpower had nuclear weapons, advanced aircraft, and professional soldiers. The small country had farmers with simple weapons and the will to never surrender. The images showed American soldiers in Vietnamese jungles, looking confused and afraid. They showed Vietnamese fighters disappearing into tunnels and emerging behind enemy lines. The superpower lost, Jake said simply, not because the small country was stronger, but because the small country understood something the superpower did not. In a war between a professional army and people fighting for their homes, the people fighting for their homes always have one advantage. The ethereal delegate pulsed with curiosity. What advantage is that? Time, Jake said. The professional army has to win quickly to justify the cost. The people fighting for their homes just have to survive until the professional army gives up. He changed the display again. This time it showed graphs and charts depicting the economic cost of maintaining a large military force across interstellar distances. Your combined fleets require massive resources to maintain: food, fuel, ammunition, replacement parts. All of it has to be transported across hundreds of light years. Every day you spend fighting humans is a day your economies are bleeding resources. Emma added her own information to the display. Our analysis shows that a prolonged war would collapse the economies of at least 6 council species within 2 years. The others would face severe internal problems as their populations demand to know why they are spending their wealth to fight humans instead of improving their own lives. The chamber fell silent again. Jake could see the alien delegates doing their own calculations, realizing that the humans were right about the economics of interstellar warfare. But there is something else you should consider, Jake continued. Something more important than economics or military strategy. He paused and looked directly at each alien delegate in turn. You demanded war because you think humans are dangerous. You think we fight too much, spread too fast, ask too many questions. You want to put us in a cage because you are afraid of what we might become. Jake's voice grew louder, filling the massive chamber. But here is what you do not understand. If you go to war with humanity, you will not be fighting the humans you think you know. You will be fighting the humans we become when someone tries to destroy everything we love. The display changed one final time. It showed human history again, but different images. The London Blitz, with humans refusing to surrender despite nightly bombing. Stalingrad, where humans fought for every building and every street. The Warsaw Ghetto, where people with no hope of victory fought anyway because they would not die quietly. This is what war with humans looks like, Jake said. We do not fight wars to win territory or resources. We fight wars to decide who gets to exist. And we have never lost a war where our existence was at stake. The council delegates stared at the images of human warfare. Cities destroyed, but never surrendered. Armies that fought until the last soldier fell. Civilians who picked up weapons when their soldiers were gone. So here is humanity's answer to your demands, Jake said. We reject your authority to rule over us. We reject your right to limit our growth. We reject your ultimatum entirely. He put away his datapad and looked up at the alien leaders. But we offer you something better than surrender or war. We offer you partnership, trade, cooperation between equals, cultural exchange, scientific collaboration. Jake's voice became softer, but somehow more dangerous. 3 days passed after Jake Morrison delivered humanity's response to the Galactic Council. The alien delegates had not given their answer yet, but Jake was not waiting for them. He had work to do. Captain Lisa Carter stood on the bridge of the USS Endeavour as it traveled through hyperspace toward the neutral zone. Her ship was not impressive by alien standards. It was smaller than most Council vessels and carried no visible weapons. But Lisa knew what her ship could really do when needed. "Captain," her communications officer called out, "we are receiving the scheduled transmission from Ambassador Morrison." "Put him on screen," Lisa ordered. Jake's face appeared on the main display. He was sitting in what looked like a simple conference room, but Lisa knew he was actually in a heavily shielded communication bunker on Earth. "Captain Carter, are you ready to begin Phase 3 of our operation?" Jake asked. "All systems are ready, sir. Danny Rodriguez has finished preparing the information packages. We can begin broadcasting immediately." Jake nodded. "Excellent. Remember, we are not trying to threaten anyone. We are simply sharing human history and culture with our galactic neighbors. Educational programs, you might say." Lisa smiled. She understood what Jake was really doing. "Of course, sir. Educational programs." The transmission ended, and Lisa turned to her crew. "Begin broadcasting on all public frequencies. Target every major population center in Council space. Across the galaxy, billions of alien citizens turned on their communication devices to find something new. Human broadcasts were appearing on channels that had never carried human programming before. At first, many aliens ignored them. But as word spread, more and more beings began to watch. The broadcasts started simply. A pleasant human woman named Mary Johnson appeared on screens across 12 different star systems. She spoke in perfectly translated alien languages, her voice calm and friendly. "Hello, citizens of the galaxy," Mary said. "My name is Mary Johnson, and I would like to share some stories about my people. Stories about humans and how we think about war." The first story was about ancient Sparta. Mary explained how 300 soldiers held off an army of over 100,000 warriors at a narrow mountain pass called Thermopylae. The Persian Emperor Xerxes had conquered most of the known world, Mary said. His army was so large that when his soldiers drank from rivers, the rivers ran dry. He sent a message to the Spartan king Leonidas demanding surrender. Images appeared on screen showing the massive Persian army facing the tiny Spartan force. Alien viewers across the galaxy watched with growing interest. Xerxes told Leonidas that his arrows would block out the sun. Leonidas replied that his men would fight in the shade. When Xerxes demanded that the Spartans lay down their weapons, Leonidas told him to come and take them. The broadcast showed what happened next. The Spartans held the pass for 3 days, killing thousands of Persian soldiers while losing only a few of their own. Even when they were finally defeated, their sacrifice inspired all of Greece to unite against the Persian invasion. The lesson, Mary explained, is that humans have always believed some things are more important than survival. Freedom is one of those things. On the Zephyrian homeworld, Chancellor Zephyr watched the broadcast with growing unease. His advisors had told him that human resistance would collapse quickly once the shooting started. But this story suggested that humans might fight even when they had no chance of winning. The second broadcast told the story of the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. Mary explained how Jewish humans fought against Nazi forces even though they knew they would lose. "The humans in the Warsaw Ghetto had almost no weapons," Mary said. "They faced trained soldiers with tanks and aircraft. Their children were starving. Their situation was hopeless." Images showed the desperate fighting in the ruined city. Humans with homemade weapons facing professional soldiers, buildings destroyed, but the fighting continuing in the rubble. "They fought anyway," Mary continued, "not because they thought they could win, but because they refused to die quietly. They chose to make their enemies pay for every street, every building, every life." On the crystalline world of the ethereals, the logical beings calculated the mathematics of the Warsaw Ghetto battle. The humans had achieved a negative tactical outcome while suffering maximum casualties. By any logical measure, their actions made no sense. But the Ethereals also calculated something else. The Nazi forces had to commit significant resources to crush the rebellion, resources that could not be used elsewhere. The doomed human resistance had weakened their enemies even in defeat. The third broadcast was about Vietnam. Mary showed images of a small country fighting against the most powerful military on Earth. American soldiers with advanced weapons facing Vietnamese fighters who seemed to appear and disappear like ghosts. The United States had nuclear weapons, jet aircraft, and 500,000 professional soldiers, Mary explained. North Vietnam had farmers with simple rifles and an unshakable belief that they were fighting for their homes. The broadcast showed the tunnels of Cu Chi, where Vietnamese fighters lived underground for years. It showed booby traps made from bamboo and metal scraps that could disable advanced military vehicles. It showed American soldiers trying to fight, an enemy that refused to stand still and be destroyed. The Americans won almost every battle, Mary said. But the Vietnamese won the war, because winning battles means nothing if your enemy will not admit defeat. On the Vrex homeworld, Queen Vrex watched this broadcast with particular attention. Her species understood hierarchy and submission. When a stronger force defeated a weaker one, the weaker one submitted. That was the natural order. But these humans seemed to have a different understanding of natural order. They appeared to believe that being weaker did not mean accepting defeat. The broadcasts continued for days. Mary Johnson told the story of the Siege of Leningrad, where humans ate wallpaper paste and leather belts rather than surrender their city. She told about the Battle of Britain, where outnumbered pilots fought desperately to protect their island home. Each story had the same theme: humans faced with impossible odds who refused to give up. Humans who found ways to hurt their enemies even when they could not defeat them. Humans who treated death as preferable to slavery. Danny Rodriguez monitored alien communication networks from his post aboard the Endeavour. He reported to Captain Carter that the broadcasts were having their intended effect. Alien civilian populations are asking their governments why they want to fight humans, Danny said. Military recruitment is down 30% in Chronari space. Zephyrian trading guilds are demanding to know why the government is risking their profitable relationships with human colonies. Lisa nodded. What about military communications? More interesting, Danny replied. Alien fleet commanders are requesting detailed analyses of human military capabilities. They want to know exactly what they would be facing in a war. Lisa smiled. And what are their analysts telling them? Danny pulled up intercepted reports on his screen. That human military technology is more advanced than they originally believed. That human tactical doctrine emphasizes mobility and unpredictability. That human soldiers are trained to operate independently even when cut off from command. The broadcasts were working exactly as Jake had planned. The alien populations were learning that humans were not the primitive species their governments had described. And the alien militaries were realizing that conquering humanity would not be the simple task they had expected. On the fourth day of broadcasting, Mary Johnson appeared on screens across the galaxy with a different kind of story. This time she talked about human cooperation and peace. Humans do not only know how to fight, she said, we also know how to build. Let me tell you about the Marshall Plan. She explained how the United States had rebuilt Europe after World War II, spending enormous resources to help their former enemies recover from the war. She showed images of American aid workers distributing food and medical supplies to German civilians whose cities had been bombed flat. The humans who had fought each other so desperately chose to become partners instead of continuing as enemies, Mary said. They realized that cooperation was more profitable than conquest. The broadcast showed the results. Europe rebuilding stronger than before, former enemies becoming allies. Trade and cultural exchange replacing military occupation. This is also part of human nature, Mary explained. We can be terrible enemies, but we can also be the most loyal friends. The choice of which you meet depends entirely on how you choose to approach us. Captain Carter received a priority transmission from Jake while the latest broadcast was airing. His face appeared on her private screen, and she could see the satisfaction in his expression. Captain, our intelligence networks are reporting some interesting developments, Jake said. 3 council species have quietly withdrawn their fleets from the border regions. 2 more have sent unofficial diplomatic messages asking about possible trade agreements. What about the hardliners? Lisa asked. The Kronari are still beating their war drums. The Vrex Queen refuses to back down. The Zephyrian Chancellor is maintaining his aggressive stance, but his own people are pressuring him to reconsider. Lisa looked at the star charts showing council fleet movements. The alien forces. The Kronari battle fleet moved through hyperspace toward the Human Research Station at Kepler 442. Admiral Thrak commanded 60 heavy cruisers and 200 fighter craft. His orders were simple: destroy the station and make it look like an accident. The Kronari High Command had grown tired of Jake Morrison's games. The human ambassador thought he could frighten the council with old stories and stolen intelligence. It was time to show these primitive beings what real power looked like. Admiral Thrak studied the tactical display from his command ship. The Human Research Station appeared on the screen as a small dot orbiting a distant star. Intelligence reports said the station housed only 300 civilian scientists and a minimal security force. Target acquired, his weapons officer reported. The station has no military vessels in the area. Their defenses are limited to basic shields and point defense systems. Thrak nodded with satisfaction. This would be easy. The humans would lose their research facility and understand that the Council was serious about their demands. When other human colonies saw what happened at Kepler 442, they would pressure their government to surrender. Begin the attack, Thrak ordered. Make it look like a reactor malfunction. I want no evidence that we were here. The Kronari ships opened fire with precise energy weapons. They targeted the station's power core, causing a cascade failure that would appear to be an accident. Within minutes, the research station was an expanding cloud of debris. Thrak watched the destruction with professional satisfaction. No human ships had responded to the station's distress calls. No rescue vessels were coming. The message had been sent clearly. Admiral, his communications officer called out, we are receiving a transmission from the human diplomatic vessel Endeavor. Thrak frowned. How had the humans learned about the attack so quickly? Put it through. Jake Morrison's face appeared on the command screen. He was sitting calmly in what looked like a simple office, showing no emotion about the destruction of the research station. Admiral Thrak, Jake said, I hope you are satisfied with your work at Kepler 442. Thrak kept his face blank. I do not know what you are talking about, human. My fleet is on routine patrol in this sector. Jake smiled slightly. Of course. Just as the destruction of Research Station 7 was just a routine reactor malfunction. These things happen sometimes. Exactly, Thrak replied. Accidents are unfortunate but inevitable when dealing with primitive technology. Indeed, Jake said. I wanted to personally thank you for providing such a clear demonstration of Kronari military doctrine. It will be very useful for educational purposes. Thrak did not like the human's tone. There was something wrong with this conversation. Jake Morrison should be angry or afraid or demanding justice for the destroyed station. Instead, he seemed almost pleased. What do you mean by educational purposes? Thrak asked. Well, Admiral, you have just shown the galaxy exactly what happens when Council forces attack human civilian targets. The recording of your attack will be very useful for explaining to other species why humanity cannot accept Council authority. Thrak felt a cold sensation in his gut. What recording? Jake touched something off-screen and the command display changed. It now showed footage of the Kronari attack on the research station. The images were perfectly clear, showing Chronari ships deliberately targeting civilian facilities. You see, Admiral, humans have been preparing for this moment for quite some time. We knew that eventually someone on the council would lose patience with diplomacy and resort to violence. We made sure to have excellent surveillance equipment in place to record the event. The recording showed everything. Chronari ships moving into attack formation, weapons fire directed at non-military targets, the deliberate destruction of a scientific research facility with no military value. This footage will be broadcast across the galaxy within the hour, Jake continued. Every civilian population in Council space will see what their leaders consider acceptable tactics. I suspect many of them will have strong opinions about attacking unarmed scientists. Thrak realized he had made a terrible mistake. The attack was supposed to intimidate humans and demonstrate Council power. Instead, it had given the humans exactly the propaganda tool they needed to turn galactic public opinion against the Council. You set a trap, Thrak said. I prepared for the inevitable, Jake replied. The Chronari have never shown restraint when dealing with species they consider inferior. I knew you would eventually do something that would make you look like the aggressors. In this conflict? Jake leaned forward slightly. But Admiral, the recording is not the main reason I wanted to speak with you personally. Then what is? I wanted to deliver a message. The 300 humans who died at Research Station 7 were not soldiers. They were scientists studying ways to improve crop yields on marginal worlds. They were teachers and doctors and engineers. They had families who loved them. Jake's voice remained calm, but Thrak heard something dangerous underneath the words. Those people died because you wanted to send a message to humanity. So I want to send a message back. Are you ready to receive it, Admiral? Before Thrak could respond, alarms began blaring throughout his flagship. His tactical officer was shouting reports from across the bridge. Admiral, we have lost contact with the entire 3rd Squadron. What do you mean, lost contact? 12 ships, sir. They were on the outer perimeter of our formation. They just vanished from our sensors. Thrak stared at his tactical display. 12 heavy cruisers had simply disappeared. No explosions, no distress calls, no debris. They were there one moment and gone the next. Sir, another officer called out, the 7th Squadron is also offline. 20 ships total missing now. Jake Morrison was still on the communication screen, watching Thrak's growing panic with the same calm expression. Admiral, Jake said, I believe you are beginning to understand my message. More alarms sounded. More ships vanished from the tactical display. The Chronari fleet was being systematically dismantled by an enemy they could not see or fight. Where are my ships? Thrak demanded. What have you done with them? Your ships are safe, Admiral. Your crews are alive and well. They are simply no longer under your command. Thrak looked at his remaining vessels. He had started with 60 heavy cruisers. Now he had less than 30, and the number was still dropping. This is impossible. Humans do not have the technology to disable our ships without being detected. Jake smiled. Admiral, you made the same mistake that many military commanders have made throughout history. You assumed that because your enemy appeared to be weaker, they actually were weaker. Another squadron vanished from the tactical display. Thrak was down to 15 ships now, and he could see the fear spreading across his bridge crew. Sir, his weapons officer said quietly, should we return fire? We cannot see any enemy ships to target. Thrak realized the horrible truth. He was in command of one of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy, but he had no idea what he was fighting, or how to fight it. Admiral, Jake said from the communication screen, let me explain what is happening to your fleet. For the past 8 months, human engineers have been developing new stealth technology. We have also been studying Chronari, ship designs, and finding their weaknesses. The tactical display showed a new image. It was a schematic of a Chronari heavy cruiser with several areas highlighted in red. Your ships have excellent armor and powerful weapons, Jake continued, but they also have a critical flaw. Your power distribution systems are vulnerable to Electromagnetic pulse weapons delivered at precisely the right frequency. Thrax stared at the schematic. The highlighted areas showed the exact locations where human weapons had disabled his ships. The electromagnetic pulse does not destroy your vessels, Jake explained. It simply shuts down their main systems for several hours, long enough for human boarding parties to take control and escort your crews to comfortable detention facilities. Boarding. Parties? Thrax repeated. We have seen no human ships. That is because human ships do not look like what you expect ships to look like. We have learned to make our vessels appear to be asteroids, space debris, or natural phenomena. Your sensors detect them, but your computers classify them as harmless objects. More Chronari ships disappeared from the display. Thrax was now down to 8 vessels out of his original 60. Admiral, Jake said, I want you to understand something very important. Your crews are being treated well. They are receiving medical care, good food, and comfortable quarters. When this conflict ends, they will be returned to their families unharmed. Thrax felt confused. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to report back to your superiors exactly what happened here. I want them to understand that humans could have destroyed your entire fleet, but we chose not to. Jake leaned back in his chair. This is what mercy looks like, Admiral. Your people attacked and killed 300 unarmed civilians. In response, we captured your entire fleet without killing a single Chronari soldier. Thrax's remaining ships were now completely surrounded by invisible human vessels. He could see them on his sensors as faint energy signatures, but they still looked like ordinary space rocks and metal fragments. We are returning your command ship and 2 escorts to Chronari space, Jake said. You will carry a message to your high command. The message is simple. This is what happens when you attack human civilians. We do not respond why news of Admiral Thrax's defeat spread through Council space faster than hyperspace communications. Within hours, every alien government knew that humans had captured an entire Chronari battle fleet without firing a single killing shot. The implications were staggering. Jake Morrison sat in his office on Earth, watching intelligence reports flood in from across the galaxy. The psychological impact of the Kepler 442 incident was exactly what he had hoped for. Some Council species were backing away from the conflict. Others were becoming more aggressive. Emma Brooks entered the office carrying a stack of data pads. Sir, we have responses from 8 of the 12 Council species. 3 have withdrawn their fleets from our borders. 2 are requesting immediate diplomatic talks. Jake nodded. And the others? The Chronari High Command has declared total war. They are mobilizing their entire fleet for a massive assault on human space. The Virex Queen is supporting them with her forces. The Zephyrian Chancellor is wavering, but still maintaining his aggressive stance. Jake studied the reports. This was the critical moment. Some aliens had learned the lesson he was trying to teach. Others would need more direct education. What about internal reactions within those species? Jake asked. Emma consulted her datapad. Very interesting developments, sir. On the Chronari homeworld, there are massive protests against the war. Families of the captured fleet crews are demanding their government negotiate for their return. She switched to another report. The Vrex hive colonies are showing signs of civil unrest. Lower castes are questioning why they should fight humans when their own queen keeps them in poverty. Jake smiled. This was the real purpose of capturing the Chronari fleet instead of destroying it. Every captured soldier had a family who wanted them home safely. Every family was now questioning why their government was fighting a war that put their loved ones at risk. Sir, Emma continued, we have also intercepted communications between the remaining Council hardliners. They are planning a joint operation against our most heavily populated colony world. Jake's expression grew serious. Which world? New Terra. Population 12 million, mostly civilians. They think that threatening our largest colony will force us to surrender. Jake stood up and walked to the window overlooking the Pacific Ocean. New Terra was humanity's most successful colony, a beautiful world with thriving cities and productive farms. It was also exactly the kind of target that would prove whether aliens understood humans or not. They are making the same mistake that empires have made for thousands of years, Jake said. They think that threatening our families will make us submit. They do not understand that threatening our families will make us completely unrestrained. He turned back to Emma. Send word to Captain Carter. It is time to begin Phase 5 of our operation. The divide and conquer phase, Emma asked. Exactly. The Council is not really an alliance. It is 12 different species with 12 different agendas pretending to work together. Time to stop pretending. Jake walked to his desk and activated a secure communication terminal. Within moments, he was connected to Captain Lisa Carter aboard the USS Endeavour. Captain, I need you to make contact with the Luminary delegation. Set up a private meeting with Ambassador Kyla Chen. Do not let any other Council species know about the meeting. Lisa nodded from the screen. What should I tell her? Tell her that we have information about Vrex plans to attack Luminary colonies while their fleets are busy fighting humans. Tell her we would like to share our intelligence in the interest of preventing unnecessary suffering. The Luminary were one of the more peaceful Council species. They had joined the alliance against humanity reluctantly, under pressure from the more aggressive members. Jake was betting that they would choose their own survival over Council unity when forced to make that choice. 2 days later, Lisa Carter met with Kyla Chen in a neutral space station near the border between human and Luminary territory. The Luminary ambassador was tall and graceful, with pale blue skin and large eyes that seemed to see everything. Ambassador Chen, Lisa said, thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I have information that your government needs to see. Kyla looked nervous. Captain Carter, if my government discovers I am meeting secretly with humans, it could be considered treason. That is exactly why this information is so important, Lisa replied. She activated a holographic display showing intercepted Vrex communications. The display showed Queen Vrex talking to her military commanders about their real plans for the war against humanity. Once the human colonies are destroyed, the Queen was saying in the recording, we will need to ensure that no other species can challenge Vrex authority. The Luminary control valuable star systems that would serve our expansion better than their current occupants. The recording continued with detailed plans for Vrex attacks on Luminary worlds. The bugs planned to wait until Luminary fleets were committed to fighting humans, then strike at defenseless colony worlds. Kyla stared at the display with growing horror. They plan to attack us while we are fighting beside them, the Vrex see. This war is an opportunity to eliminate 2 potential rivals at once, Lisa explained. They expect the humans to weaken the Luminary military before the Vrex destroy both species. Lisa showed more intercepted communications. Similar plans by other Council species to betray their allies once the humans were defeated. The Chronari wanted to enslave the smaller species. The Zephyrians planned to take control of trade routes currently protected by Luminary ships. Ambassador Chen, Lisa said quietly, the Council is not an alliance. It is a temporary cooperation between predators who plan to eat each other once they finish eating humanity. Kyla was silent for several minutes, studying the intelligence reports. Finally, she looked up at Lisa with determination in her large eyes. What do humans propose? She asked. Separate peace, Lisa replied immediately. The Luminary withdraw from the Council alliance. In exchange, humans provide military, protection for Luminary colonies and preferential trade agreements for Luminary goods. You would protect us, even though we joined the alliance against you? Lisa nodded. Humans do not hold grudges against people who were forced into bad situations. We understand the difference between willing enemies and reluctant participants. Kyla made her decision quickly. I will need to return to my government immediately. This information changes everything. Within 6 hours, the Luminary government announced their withdrawal from the Council alliance. They cited newly discovered intelligence about threats to Luminary security as their reason for leaving. Jake watched the news reports with satisfaction. 1 down, 11 to go. But the real impact came when other council species began wondering what intelligence the Luminari had discovered. If the humans could convince one ally to abandon the alliance, what other secrets did they know? Danny Rodriguez reported increased chatter on alien communication networks. Council species were becoming suspicious of each other. Several were quietly moving military assets to protect their home systems instead of concentrating on attacks against humans. "Sir," Danny said from his monitoring station, "the Ethereals are requesting a private meeting with you. They want to discuss what they call logical alternatives to continued conflict." Jake smiled. The crystalline beings were probably the most intelligent species on the Council. They would have calculated the probability of Council victory and found it unacceptably low. "Set up the meeting," Jake ordered, "but make sure the other Council species know about it. I want them to wonder what the Ethereals are discussing with us." The psychological campaign was working perfectly. Jake was not just fighting a war against the Council, he was fighting 12 separate wars against 12 different species, each with their own fears and weaknesses. The Chronari feared being seen as weak. The Vrex feared challenges to their hierarchy. The Zephyrians feared losing their economic advantages. The Ethereals feared making illogical decisions. Jake was giving each species exactly what they feared most. And he was doing it by showing them the truth about their allies. The Council had demanded war, thinking they were facing a primitive species that would surrender quickly. Instead, they were discovering that they were facing a species that understood the most important truth about warfare. The best way to win a war is to make your enemies fight each other instead of fighting you. Emma brought Jake the latest intelligence reports. "Sir, we are seeing increased military activity near Council space borders. Several species are repositioning their fleets to defend their own territories instead of attacking ours." And the Vrex reaction to the Luminari withdrawal? Queen Vrex is furious. She has threatened to attack Luminari colonies anyway, which has caused panic among the remaining Council members. They are starting to realize that the Virex might be as dangerous to them as they are to humans. Jake looked at the tactical displays showing alien fleet movements. The Council alliance was fracturing exactly as he had planned. Soon, the aliens would be too busy watching each other to concentrate on fighting humanity. But Jake also knew that the most dangerous part was still coming. Some Council species would never accept diplomatic solutions. They would fight until they were completely defeated or completely destroyed. The